What began as a roast quickly morphed into something far more serious. The question that buzzed through media circuits, podcasts, and late-night comedy shows was simple: will Bezos respond? Beneath the memes and late-night laughter, a sharper edge cut through when Megyn Kelly branded the world's richest man as a walking phallic symbol. It wasn't just a crude insult, it was a direct hit to a billion-dollar brand built on dominance. She didn't mock the man, she cracked the myth. Because when you throw a stone at the king of Amazon, the owner of the Washington Post, man racing Elon Musk to space with Blue Origin, and commanding oceans on a $500 million yacht, people pay attention. Publicly, Bezos stayed silent. But those close to him say that wasn't surrender, it was strategy. A lesson learned long ago on his grandfather's ranch. True power doesn't need to roar. It waits, and when it strikes, it rewrites the rules. To the outside world, Megyn was fueling a trending moment. But to Bezos' inner circle, this wasn't a moment, it was a declaration. And in his universe, wars are won not with words but with wealth content. Calculated silence. The memes? Just surface-level noise. Something deeper was brewing. The real damage wasn't just in the insulted. It was in the connection she made between his looks and his legacy. She played that clip again, the one where Bezos, freshly back from space, thanked Amazon employees and customers for funding his flight. A soundbite that triggered fury from AOC, from union leaders, from the same warehouse workers collapsing in heat while he floated above Earth in zero gravity. That moment didn't fade, it became a viral indictment. Proof of how distant he'd grown from the workers who built the empire beneath him. And just when the Venice wedding was meant to reset the narrative, paint his life as a modern-day fairy tale, only poured fuel on the fire. Lauren's designer gown list with diamonds was supposed to sell a story of everlasting love, but instead it echoed tone-deaf extravagance. Critics saw hypocrisy in that romance. With Amazon battling antitrust lawsuits, worker strikes, and a PR crisis there, lavish three-day affair shutting down Italian pizza seemed grotesque. And the whispers only got louder. Both Bezos and Lauren had once been married to others. Their whirlwind romance splashed across yacht decks with DiCaprio, and foreign royalty clashed violently with their environmental promises. Lauren preaches sustainability while cruising on a diesel-guzzling super yacht that burns through 10,000 liters like it's nothing. And Megyn Kelly didn't just point to the cracks in their image, spotlighted them. From Lauren's rumored surgeries to Jeff's tightened jawline, all screamed one thing: a billionaire in midlife crisis monitoring to rewrite his story with Botox and billions. This wasn't tabloid fodder anymore, it was a reflection, a spotlight on a billionaire fighting not for power but for relevance. And the world didn't get angry, they laughed. Because in the digital age, Mockery wounds deeper than outrage. Bezos didn't speak, but make no mistake, he was moving. Insiders described an eerie calm. Amazon boardrooms sealed off, lawyers outlining legal responses, PR teams scrambling to rewrite the story. At the Washington Post, tension buzzed through the newsroom. Some reporters whispered of articles mysteriously pulled before publication. Subscriptions were sliding. Influence was fading. Yet Jeff's control remained invisible and absolute. Megyn mocked the Post's reach, calling it less impactful than a mid-tier YouTube channel. And she had the numbers to prove it. Joe Rogan's Trump interview had 37 million views overnight. Bezos knew the truth. The old guard of media was bleeding, and the new storyteller Steve Voiceware selling the narrative. That reality shook him more than any insult. Because if even the Washington Post couldn't shape public opinion anymore, what did ownership mean? The joke had evolved into a wake-up call. The internet was reminding him, no matter how rich you are, you can't outspend ridicule. The memes spread like wildfire. That one phrase, walking penis Beckham, a global punchline animated in YouTube. Skit spray painted on warehouse walls crawled across protest signs. No filter, no mercy. It became a symbol, an easy label for out-of-touch billionaires floating above the world they no longer understood. And Jeff Bezos, hailed as a trailblazer destined to colonize space, now lived as a viral punchline. But beneath the meme, something far more serious simmered. Whispers surfaced, anonymous leaks to podcasters hinting at a web of shadow companies linked to media buyouts. Allegations that editorial heads rolled not for mistakes but for daring to damage Jeff's carefully protected image. This is the territory Megyn Kelly unknowingly trespassed, not just surface-level snark but the dangerous machinery Of power. Who decides what makes the front page? Who controls what never sees daylight, especially when billionaires bankroll the press? As creators online began asking those questions, a real issue emerged. This wasn't about Bezos' Botox or bald head, it was about whether influence could erase truth. Could shame be silenced if you're rich enough? Bezos built an empire designed to dominate markets net withstand public humiliation. But the game has changed. On today's internet, shame is viral currency. And once it clings to a public figure, not even 100 press releases or a perfect wedding photo from a Venetian balcony can wash it off. Because the algorithm doesn't care about press teams, it thrives on scandal. The internet doesn't respect power, it feeds on memes, mockery, and moments that tear down the illusion of control. Jeff Bezos spent decades crafting a myth of inevitability. Amazon, the world's everything store. Austin, visible backbone of the internet. Blue Origin, gateway to the stars. The Washington Post, the voice of democracy. But all that branding can unravel with a single viral clip. One phrase repeated endlessly online had the power to redefine him not as a genius but as a cartoon. And insiders say that is what haunted him most, not the loss of money but the collapse of narrative. Because billions can safeguard stock but they can't buy back dignity once the crowd turns. And in this strange twist of fate, it was Megyn Kelly, battle scarred from her own media war swow through the match. She'd been cancelled, criticized out of mainstream networks. Yet here she stood unfiltered and unafraid, calling out Bezos in ways legacy media wouldn't dare. Her words cut through the shiny magazines, spreads the corporate PR fluff and the polished photo ops. She did what newsrooms tied to his wallet wouldn't, she mocked him directly. And in doing so, she spotlighted the silence of others. The Washington Post said nothing. Mainstream outlets gushed about the wedding dress, the E-list, guest list, Venice backdrop, but they ignored the excess contradiction, uncomfortable truth that warehouse workers were still collapsing while Bezos floated in rockets and toasted on yachts. The contrast became impossible to ignore, and with it came deeper questions. What stories are buried when billionaires hold the keys to the media? Megyn Kelly hinted at more than vanity. She spoke of spiked articles, soft journalists confiding that their reporting had vanished after legal teams intervened. Invisible hands shaping headlines, deciding what the public sees and what stays locked in drafts. Podcasters like Patrick Bet David jumped in, airing theories of leaked documents linking Bezos to a maze of shell companies snapping up smaller outlets. Not to grow profit but to control the narrative. No evidence was released, but in an age drowning in distrust, proof isn't always necessary. The mere possibility was enough to ignite suspicion. And Bezos? He stayed silent. No denial, no statement. Which only amplified the noise. Was it calculated calm or a fear that denying it would open a door too dangerous to peek behind? Either way, silence acted like gasoline. The memes multiplied. That now infamous phrase, walking penis, beckoned something more than a joke. It became a metaphor, power stripped of pretense. And once a phrase like that embeds in the cultural bloodstream, it's permanent. Not even a wedding dress laced with diamonds or yacht speeches about climate change again scrub it clean. Jeff wasn't facing a financial meltdown, was facing something far worse, a collapse of cultural power. And in today's world, culture is the real empire. His shredded physique with luxury tuxedo, diamond-studded proposal weren't symbols of success anymore. They looked like performance art for a crowd that had stopped clapping. Because once the illusion cracks, belief collapses, and when belief so does influence. Amazon workers began to question why their labor built his fortune while he floated in zero gravity. Lawmakers questioned why one man could control both commerce and information. Critics dissected how a romance born in betrayal was being paraded as a fairy tale. And through all, Megyn Kelly kept pressing. Episode after episode, appealing back the layers, her tone laced with sarcasm, spilfened brutal clarity. Her audience? Hooked. Clips exploded across TikTok, Twitter turns to watching, laughing, trusty. The internet had made its choice, ridicule over reverence. And behind the pristine glass of Bezos' empire, panic set in. Advisors debated, should we respond, sue, drown it out with positive PR? But others warned, responding only feeds it. Jeff reportedly fuming stayed eerily composed. Storms pass, he said, but this wasn't a storm. This wasn't even news. This was a meme. And memes, they stick, didn't just haunt yet, they define you. You can't delete them. You can only hope to replace them, and Jeff? He had nothing powerful enough to replace this one. The yacht vows the speeches about saving the planet, all of it felt weightless against the brutal simplicity of a joke. And that was the real gut punch. For all his billions, Jeff Bezos couldn't outspend Mockery. You can buy media platforms in perception, but not when it mutates into comedy. And once your dignity becomes a punchline, no amount of wealth can buy it back. That reality hit harder than any lawsuit or investor backlash. Best comedy doesn't just mock, it dethrones. It shrinks titans into memes and legends, into late-night bits. And when the world's richest man becomes a walking gadget, it's not about fortune anymore, it's about fading relevance. Bezos, the poster child for 21st century ambition, was now reduced to comparisons with cartoon characters, just head shape, Mehmet's face tightened to the point of parodious transformation, seen not as glow-up but as overcorrection. And Lauren's cast as his red carpet match was pulled into the same spotlight, her looks dissected frame by frame. Alleged surgeries turned into viral jokes. Her face described not as beautiful but overdone, her image viewed not as elegant but desperate. The fairy tale had warped. What was supposed to be a symbol of love and reinvention had become a spectacle of vanity, a parody of privilege. Critics didn't just question how they look at thee, began to question why they needed so badly to be seen. Was Lauren a life partner? A power move? Was Jeff a husband or just a sponsor? The narrative splintered across tabloids, podcasts, underground commentary channels. Meanwhile, traditional outlets stayed eerily quieted by corporate tease ownership strings or simple fear. But in that silence, something louder emerged: absence. People noticed what wasn't being said. Wedding coverage gushed over gowns and guest lists but skipped over Amazon's labor strikes. Glamorous profiles praised the couple's love story but never mentioned how it began in betrayal. And the most critical voices? They existed only outside the firewall of legacy media. Which domain confirmed what Megyn Kelly had implied all along. Bezos wasn't just a media mogul, he was the puppeteer. Not controlling narratives by argument but by erasure. And that silence, missing context, invisible edits felt like the most damning proof of all. Every deleted article became a red flag. Every unanswered question felt like a quiet yes. And in that void, the digital underground thrived. Podcasters surged. Raw, unfiltered voices became trusted where polished anchors failed. And Bezos, architect of one of the most powerful information machines in history, was now losing grip on the very thing he once monopolized: the message. The memes didn't stop. Photoshopped rockets beside his head. Split-screen comparisons of speeches and surgeries. Millions of shares, each one chipping away at the myth he spent decades crafting. And the more his camp stayed silent, the more that silence sounded like guilt. In the court of the internet, silence isn't golden, it's a confession. And confession? That's defeat. Megyn Kelly wasn't just a critic anymore, she had become a cultural weapon, her sharp words looping endlessly across feeds echoed by millions. She landed a blow no traditional outlet dared to throw because she owed Bezos nothing fair, no lost source and word to no censor. She mocked without limits, and in doing so she gave millions permission to join in. Jeff Bezos had turned into a case study of how fragile power becomes once image cracks. Because for him, image was the real fortress, more than money, rockets, or yachts. It was his armor. And that armor lay broken, shattered into shards, not of awe but of contempt. Contempt that spreads faster than cash. Money builds walls, but scorn slips through every crack. Bezos always believed control was his secret weapon, buying Campanis, headland, famousness. But the internet? It can't be bought. It thrives only on authenticity or ridicule. And Jeff? He'd become the latter. The same workers he once sarcastically thanked in his zero-gravity speech had weaponized that clip, remixing it into chant song scripts echoing outside Amazon warehouses. It had become the anthem of exploitation. A billionaire openly thanking the underpaid for funding his story right to space. That clip became a cultural lightning rod. Politicians seized iTunes, blasted it at rally sand, no matter how hard Bezos pivoted to climate pledges or philanthropy. Echo was relentless. Thank you to every Amazon worker. Thank you to every customer because you paid for this. The irony cut deep, fusing with Megyn Kelly's roast to create a perfect storm no PR strategy could calm. Suddenly, Bezos wasn't a visionary. He was a villain. And Lauren's, the symbol of glamourly, made the spectacle worse. Every gown, every diamond, every yacht snapshot was twisted into proof of extravagance. Their green fuel press releases were ridiculed by memes pairing wind-powered sails with smokestacks and delivery trucks. The harder they defended, the more out of touch they appeared. Behind closed doors, whispers of panic swirled. Lawyers warned against lawsuits fearing discovery might expose more. Silence seemed safer than denial, but that silence was sinking the ground beneath Bezos' feet. Meanwhile, Megyn kept striking, calling his wealth stomach churning, his wedding a delusion, his makeover desperation. Audiences nodded, blogged, and shared. She had nothing to lose. He had everything to protect. And when power relies on silence, the imbalance makes every hit land deeper. Jeff's power thrived on the silence of employees, journalists, politicians bound by money, influenced in fear. But now one voice had shattered that silence. And countless others echoed. Heroes podcasts from every corner, from political debate to comedy, repeated the phrase until it became a cultural brand, walking penis. Suddenly, Jeff Bezos wasn't just the Amazon founder, space visionary, or the Washington Post owner. He was a meme. And when a label sticks like that, it erases decades of carefully built reputation. His empire, no matter how vast or polished, yet suddenly seemed exposed to rivals or regulations, but to ridicule. Ridicule corrodes legitimacy, and legitimacy is the bedrock of power. When leaders become punchlines, their commands weaken, their decisions lose weight, their image crumbles. Jeff faced that collapse in real time. What was meant to be the crowning jewel of his imaginous wedding turned into a cultural reckoning, mocked for extravagance, called out for hypocrisy, dissed for optics. Instead of control, it marked loss of narrative, loss of respect, loss of the myth of invincibility. And that loss can't be tallied on any ledger. It's not dollars fading, but authority dissolving. Bezos had always believed he could outbuild dude's spend list. But no watched helplessly as his reputation was eroded, not by regulators, not by competitors, but by laughter, a force beyond his reach. What started as a roast quickly became a revelation. That revelation turned contagious brooding until it morphed into undeniable cultural truth. Jeff Bezos was no longer untouchable, he was mockable. And in today's world where perception is power, being mockable is deadly. Megyn Kelly didn't need leaked files or insider tips. Her blunt, unfiltered words pierced the carefully constructed fact, and once the wound opened, it only grew wider. Late-night hosts riffed on it, meme accounts amplified it, and commentators from politics to pop culture couldn't get enough. Jeff's silence? It only made things worse, cementing the belief that he had no comeback. How do you fight a joke? You can't sue it. You can't silence it. Once a joke belongs to the internet, it's there forever. Behind closed doors, advisors whispered about new strategies for braying, with philanthropy piling into climate efforts, showing humility. But humility can't be faked now. After decades of arrogance, rocket launches funded by sweatshop, labor, and billion-dollar weddings flaunted while workers struggled to survive. Meanwhile, Lauren kept smiling, posting glamorous shots, but every post only poured fuel on the fire. More proof of detachment, more evidence of vanity. On the internet showed no mercy. It devoured every image, yet twisting them into parodies. Every headline became a symbol of hypocrisy. Jeff watched as the empire he built stayed financially strong, but became culturally bankrupt. As once culture is lost, it can't be bought back. Culture is what shapes legacy. His name is synonymous with innovation, echoed indulgence. His imagined ambition incarnate screamed arrogance. His story, once sold as inspiration, was now ridiculed as desperation. The real question wasn't whether Bezos would survive financially, it was if he could ever reclaim relevance. And for the first time, the answer felt like a firm no. The roast had outgrown the man. It became a symbol of everything people despise about unchecked wealth, media, silence, cosmetic, reinvention, hypocrisy dressed as virtue. It wasn't about Jeff's head shape or Lauren's surgeries anymore, it was about a broken system. They represented a world of money, power, and imaginability on the backs of those who'd never board a rocket or wear a diamond-studded gown. Megyn Kelly sparked the flame, but the fire burned because the world was ready to watch it consume. And there stood Jeff Bezos, not as a pioneer, a titan, or even a villain, but as a spectacle. A walking reminder that power without respect is fragile, that image without authenticity is doomed, and that even the richest man on earth can't silence laughter once it turns against him. Please subscribe my channel for more unique videos.